Hello everybody, welcome back to the Chico MMA channel, guys. Before we start the video, I would like to thank you all for 10 subscribers. I know it's not a lot, but for me right now, that is an amount that I am very happy with. That's still 10 individual people that actually tune in to watch my stuff and care enough to subscribe. To me, that is pretty impressive, and I want to thank you all for watching, viewing, subscribing, and yeah, let's start off the video. Teixeira versus Jamal Hill, UFC 283. This is the first pay-per-view of January. The first pay-per-view of, what do you mean of January? There's one every month. Of the year of 2023 is what I mean. This is the January pay-per-view card. There have been only 2 events in the month of January and 1 pay-per-view. Obviously, there's going to be 2 pay-per-views in March. Very excited about that. There's going to be a big main event for February with Makhachev Volkanovski, number 1 versus number 2, champion versus champion. That's an exciting main event. And we're starting off the year not with anything too crazy, but it's definitely a card that will be entertaining. It's got a lot of big name value from guys out of Brazil, such as, obviously, the website's a little bit broken right now. Obviously, they got guys like Gilbert Burns, Jessica Andrade, Johnny Walker, Shogun, Gregory Rodriguez. You know, those are just the guys from Brazil. They've also got fights on this card that look like they will be very, very fun to watch, such as Figueiredo Moreno 4 and Craig versus Johnny Walker. And all of these fights look like very, very fun fights. I think just off the bat, I think we're going to see a lot of wins coming from the Brazilians. But we're going to get into that. Let's start off with, where is it? Yeah, here. We're going to start off with Josiane Nunes versus Zara Fern. I think that's how you say it, Zara Fern. Let's pull up their fighter pages. Nunes versus Zara Fern. Zara Fern. It's a difficult name for me to say for no reason. Obviously, the record is there's a very clear difference in the record. 9-1 versus 6-4. Very different there. You look at Josiane Nunes, 2-0 in the UFC, on a big winning streak right now. Hasn't lost since 2013, which is crazy. And we look at Zara Fern, who is 6-4, 0-2 in the UFC, so complete opposite records in the UFC. Lost to Megan Anderson in 2019, lost to Felicia Spencer in 2020, hasn't fought since, is now fighting the number 15 ranked bantamweight Josiane Nunes, who hasn't lost since 2013. I think it's very clear who I'm going to pick for this one. I think, in all honesty, Josiane Nunes will get this done by some kind of finish. Not some kind of finish, a knockout or a technical knockout in the first round. Does it go to a decision? It's possible, but I think it's more possible that Nunes gets a finish on the feet. Now, we move on to Terrence McKinney versus Ismail Bonfim. Now, since I knew about this fight happening, I was saying, oh yeah, Terrence McKinney's got this. You know, he's T-Rex and he's crazy in that first round. But after thinking to myself more and doing a little bit more research, it's become more and more apparent to me that Ismail Bonfim has a very good chance at beating Terrence McKinney in his UFC debut. If you look at Terrence McKinney, 13-4, 3-1 in the UFC. He's only lost in the UFC coming by way of Drew Dober by knockout in the first round after a dominant performance at the start of the round by Terrence McKinney, and a nice comeback from Drew Dober, who is now ranked number 14 at lightweight. Since then, in his last fight, Terrence McKinney has gotten a submission in the first round in August on the Thiago Santos Jamal Hill undercard. Now is going to face against Ismail Bonfim, who is 18-3. I think I'm saying his last name right, Bonfim, or is it pronounced differently? Yeah, it's just green everywhere. Not only is it green, but it's a lot of, round 2, round 1. Obviously, his last 3 fights came by way of unanimous decision. Still very impressive what he's been able to accomplish, in the octagon. Some of these guys may not be the best guys, like obviously 7-7, 3-2, 19-9. It's not super good guys, and obviously when he goes against guys that are a little bit better, like 10-1, 12-2-1, 28-3, you start to see less knockouts. You start to see more unanimous decision wins that are still unanimous. So it's impressive what this guy's able to accomplish. He hasn't lost since 2014. It was against Renato Moicano, and it was by a submission. He's never been knocked out, or at least maybe he's been knocked out in these fights down here, these two losses down here that you can't see what happened back in 2011. But that's 2011. You know, since then, he's just been on it. And when you look at Terrence McKinney, I think, has gone up against definitely the more tougher fights, such as Drew Dober, who's a very tough guy. Matt Frivola, who's obviously that win has aged very well, especially since it was 7 seconds. That's very impressive. And, you know, thinking about it, it's like, even though Terrence McKinney likely has more experience with more tougher guys, obviously Ismail Bonfim has more experience in general. What I mean by that is time. He's been fighting since 2011 professionally. 2011, 2013, 2014, you know, he just has a lot of fights against a lot of guys, and he wins a lot of them. He has less losses than Terrence McKinney as well, which also it doesn't mean too much usually, but it's something to note that Ismail Bonfim has never been knocked out, and he started fighting in 2011 professionally. Terrence McKinney has started fighting in 2016 technically, 2016. And who do I think is going to win this fight? I think how I see this fight going is Terrence McKinney, you know, does his usual onslaught, just starts pounding on the guy in the first round, starts going crazy. I think he's going to fade in the later round of round 1, and you're going to see a little bit more of Ismail Bonfim landing more strikes. And then in round 2, what I think is going to happen, I think he'll be able to definitely put more pressure on Terrence McKinney. Now that Terrence McKinney, I think he'll be a little bit more tired. I think he'll gas out a little bit because the onslaught will be a lot. I think it'll go on for the first 3-4 minutes, maybe a little bit less. It's likely that happens too. But I think Ismail Bonfim will be able to maybe not knock him out. Maybe he'll knock him down. But I think it's either got to be some kind of standing TKO or a ground and pound. But the way I'm going with this one right now, I'll say Bonfim, and I'll take him by submission in the second round. That's my pick right now. Knockout is very possible as well. A Terrence McKinney win is very possible as well. So we're going to move on to Jailton Almeida versus Shamil Abdurakhimov. This is the pick I think I'm most certain about. You know, when you look at Jailton Almeida, what he's been able to accomplish in the octagon so far, you know, making his debut on the Contender Series back in 2021, is now fighting his first ranked opponent in Shamil Abdurakhimov, who is number 15 at heavyweight. You know, he is a little bit over 30 pounds heavier than Jailton Almeida. But when you look at the difference between Almeida's last 3 fights and Abdurakhimov's last 3 fights, the difference is very, very clear. You have a guy like Jailton Almeida who has finished his first 3 opponents in the UFC, all in the first round, whether it's ground and pound, whether it's submissions, he can do it all. But when you look at Abdurakhimov, it's knockouts and losses by knockouts. He beat Marcin Tybura in 2019. It's impressive, but that's 2019. His last 3 fights, one of them was also in 2019, which isn't a good sign. Curtis Blades, he lost by knockout in the second round. Chris Dawkins lost by knockout in the second round. This is more recent in 2021. And then, actually, it's last year now. But in 2022, he lost to Sergey Pavlovich by first round knockout. Happens to everybody, so I guess it's somewhat okay. But it doesn't take away from the fact that he still did get knocked out. And it's not just a thing that's on your resume or on your record that you got knocked out. That stays with you. These knockouts, these 3 knockouts in a row across many years, they're going to stay with him, especially since he's now 41 years old. He's a very old guy for someone like that's in the UFC. So how much more can he take in terms of punishment from shots? And has he already been hit enough? You know, Sergey Pavlovich hits really, really hard. That's a tough one to come back from, especially to just jump back in right away against Yeltsin Almeida. Given in their last three fights, Abdurakhimov has gone against absolute killers in his last three, whereas Almeida has kind of gone against guys that aren't really super known and aren't that good, have never been ranked. Obviously, Abdurakhimov's last three fights, all of these three guys are still ranked top, not top 10, all of them. Two of them are still ranked top 5 even, but they're all still in the top 15. So what I think will happen is I think easily Jelton Almeida will be able to just dominate Shamil Abdurakhimov throughout one round. It'll be a submission in the first round is what I'm calling for there. Moving on to Gabriel Bonfim, the brother of Ismail Bonfim, versus Monir Lazez. Now, let's look at it. Let's pull up their fighter pages. Obviously, both have incredible records. 13-0 versus 11-2. Very good records there. Obviously, what's it called? Gabriel Bonfim coming off of a Contender Series win back in September. And he's fighting against a guy who's already been in the UFC, who's already had 3 fights in the UFC, such as Monir Lazez, who's coming off of a win by unanimous decision. His fight before that was against someone on this card, and Warley Alves, who lost. He lost by a first round knockout in that fight. Give me a sec. All right, I'm back. And pretty much that's not a good sign that he was getting knocked out. It was at the beginning of 2021. That's 2 years ago now. But since then, he fought once, which also isn't a very good sign. It was against a guy like Angi Lusa, which I don't know who that is. I don't think a lot of people know who that is. He has a win against Al Hassan, which is a win that aged decently well. Al Hassan having that recent fight. Or no, didn't he lose that fight? Yeah, I'm pretty sure he lost that fight. Okay, so then it didn't age super, super well. But, a win is a win. Before he joined the UFC, he was getting a lot of first round, second round knockouts, and as well as a few decisions here and there. We look at Gabriel Bonfim, has had no losses. He has beaten everybody he's come up against. He's gotten a lot of good chokes in. He's gotten a few knockout wins. I think just one knockout win in 2021. But this guy is very, very skilled on the ground. And when you look at Lazez, who has barely any wins by submission, I mean, he has no wins by submission, actually. And what that makes me think is I think Gabriel Bonfim is just going to be able to easily control him on the ground. And what that brings me to is, for the debut of Bonfim, I'm going to give him the win. And I'm going to say he gets it done by a submission in the first round. I think both brothers will be able to get early fight wins in their debut. We move on to Thiago Moises versus Melquizael Costa. Pretty sure I'm saying that right. I might not be, but let's open up their pages. Thiago Moises obviously is a guy that has gone up against some of the top lightweights in the world right now. He's gone up against guys such as Yoel Alvarez, Islam Makhachev, Bobby Green, Michael Johnson, Damir Ismagulov, Benil Dariush in his debut. And, win or lose, Thiago Moises is still going up against the best of the best. And when you look at Melquizael Costa, who is 19-5, he's making his UFC debut. He's coming off of a win by a knockout in the third round. And his most recent loss was in May of 2022, which is not a good sign. He didn't get knocked out or submitted, which is a better sign. I don't think he's gotten knocked out ever in his... He has retired in his corner, but he's never gotten knocked out necessarily in his career. Thiago Moises obviously is not the biggest knockout guy. He doesn't have any knockouts in the UFC or in the LFA. He has a knockout on the Contender Series. That's how he was able to get into the UFC. But other than that, it's very clear that he doesn't have a lot of power in those hands in order to knock out Makizeo Costa. So it's clear that Costa likely won't get knocked out in this fight. But does he have a chance to win? Obviously, he does have a chance to win. Do I think he will win? I don't think so. I think what happens here is Thiago Moises has gone up against way better fighters. He's gone up against way higher caliber, way higher skill level fighters. I think he'll be able to get this one done not by a finish. I think he'll be able to get it done by a decision. Some kind of unanimous decision. Maybe a submission is possible. But I'm going to say Thiago Moises by unanimous decision for that one. We move on to Gregory Rodriguez versus Bruno Ferreira. Obviously, Rodriguez was meant to fight Brad Tavares instead, but Tavares had to pull out just a week before the fight was meant to happen. Obviously, Tavares was ranked number 15 when the fight was scheduled and announced. But with the addition of Roman Dolidze in the top 15, Tavares was taken out of the top 15. So, it's not like Rodriguez was going to get ranked anyways from this fight. So him fighting Bruno Ferreira is definitely a big, big step up because, look, Bruno Ferreira, he's 9-0. Completely undefeated. They call him the Hulk. They don't call you the Hulk for no reason. You know what I mean? If you look at his record, it's knockouts across knockouts with a few chokes in there as well. All in the first round. A few of them in the second round. If they're in the second round, then they're early in the second round. You know, I mean, he never goes past the midway point of the second round. That's how crazy this guy is. And the thing with this is, like, there's so many first round knockout wins. And then you have a guy like Gregory Rodriguez who, you know, he's getting into his 30s now. He's not necessarily, you know, the chin, it doesn't get better with time. It's not getting any better. So Gregory Rodriguez taking a lot of damage in the fight with Chidi Njokwani, and obviously having that big cut in his forehead. Maybe that's a bit of an issue, but I don't think it'll play that big of a role because Gregory Rodriguez has heart. He can come back from adversity. We've seen it in a lot of his last few fights. And he can also knock people out. Gregory Rodriguez got that dog in him. I think he can stand with Bruno Ferreira. But what will the outcome be? Because both of these guys can knock each other out. It's true. It's very possible that both these guys, one of them knocks out the other. Maybe in the first round, maybe in the second round. But when you look at who each of them have fought, Gregory Rodriguez has faced a lot of adversity. He's beaten good guys like Njokwani. He's gone up against a lot of higher-level guys like Todorovic, Jun-Young Park, Petrosian, Julian Marquez. Bruno Ferreira has gone up against a lot of guys that don't have the best records or resumes. After Bruno Ferreira beats them, it's usually what happens is they go on losing streaks, or if he beat them, it was a lot of it was due to the fact that the guy hadn't fought in 2 years prior to the fight. A lot of these wins are not the best wins, and if you see a guy here with a decent record, like, look, Eliu he's 10-1, or Polakini is 3-1, or even the Jesus 10-3. It's like not bad records, but you look at who they have beaten, and it's not good. Those guys have terrible records, and it just says that Bruno Ferreira, yeah, he's undefeated, yeah, he gets a lot of finishes, but they're not against high-level guys. They're not against guys that are that good. His best win was Eliu, which I'll give him that. But Eliu's best win wasn't a really good win to have as your best win. So how I see this fight going, Bruno Ferreira can definitely knock out Gregory Rodriguez. It's possible, but I think Gregory Rodriguez, even especially with his newborn daughter, he's just got too much determination in him. I think Rodriguez will take this fight by a round 2 knockout. I think it'll be knockout, not TKO. I think it'll most likely be knockout. And there'll definitely be some adversity. The first round will definitely be a good first round. A lot of people will be talking about it for a few months, and I think Gregory Rodriguez. I think RoboCop takes it by second round knockout, even though it could be wrong, but I do hope I'm right. We move on to Shogun versus Teixeira. Now, this is a bit of an interesting fight because you have a guy like Shogun who has had countless fights in the UFC and in Pride. 27 and 13. A lot of fights. That's like, how many is that? That's like 41 professional fights. And a lot of them coming in the UFC. Obviously, he's had 13 fights in the UFC. He's had 13 fights in Pride. Then you have a guy like Ihor Potieria, who's had one fight in the UFC and then one fight against in the Contender Series. So, very different there. Potieria is 0-1 in the UFC. He has been knocked out in the second round by, I'm not even gonna try to say that name, but it was this past July actually. And if you look at Shogun's last fight, it was against OSP on the Oliveira Gaethje UFC 274 undercard. I think it was on the main card too. It was pay-per-view, and he lost by a split decision. Felt very bad for him because right at the end when they announced OSP's name, Shogun thought he won. He started celebrating a little bit, and then reality hit him pretty hard. And what I hope now is that he's able to get that win and he's able to cheer like he wanted to, because this is his retirement fight. He has admitted, he has said publicly, this is his last fight, and this is the featured prelim as well. He's on a 2-fight losing streak. He's gone up against some of the best guys in the history of MMA. He's gone up against guys such as Rampage Jackson, Antonio Nogueira, Overeem, Mark Coleman, Kevin Randleman, Forrest Griffin, Chuck Liddell, Lyoto Machida, John Jones, Dan Henderson, Gustafsson, Chael Sonnen, Dan Henderson, OSP, Corey Anderson, Anthony Smith, Paul Craig. It's just insane the amount of people who he's fought. Even if he doesn't beat them all the time, it's crazy how he still takes these fights against such such legends in the sport. And that's what Shogun is. Shogun is a legend. He's a former champion at light heavyweight. And do I think Potieria will be able to compete with him as of right now? Yes. It's very possible. Listen, Shogun is 41. He's taken a lot of damage in his career. He's fought a lot of hard hitters, high level guys. He's fought the highest level guys of their respective times as well, in their primes and everything. And the fact that he's still fighting to this day is wild. Obviously, he's retiring, but the fact that he's even getting in the ring in 2023 is pretty insane. But the thing with Potieria is a lot of people are writing him off because of his one loss in the UFC. That's his record in the UFC right now. But a lot of people forget his other wins, rear naked choke, knockout. But there's another thing is that look at these wins. They're not okay. This is a little bit far. We'll look at 2019, the furthest, right? And my God, no record. 0-3, 11-5, 5-2, which isn't too bad, 8-0, which is decent. It's just not good what's going on there. And a lot of these guys as well, they don't have wins against a lot of good high level guys either. So I don't know, man. It's tough to call this fight. The thing is with this one is Potieria has the chance to get a knockout. Shogun doesn't have much of a chance to get a knockout in this one. His last knockout win was in 2018, which is still pretty impressive. I'm very surprised by that still. But I don't know. It's a tough one to call, honestly. If I had to say, it could be a Potieria first round KO. That's possible. But I want to say decision as well. I think if I had to go with one, we've been seeing a lot with retiring legends, just them getting knocked out in the first round. Happened to Frankie Edgar. That's one example. I don't know. I still think Potieria is going to win, but how does he win? If I had to pick one way he's going to win, knockout or decision. I can't think about it for too long. I'm gonna lose audience retention. So no, Shogun is it's a tough one to call. Decision or knockout. You know what? I'm gonna go for decision because I truly don't want to see him get knocked out. So I'll say decision, and I hope Shogun gets to show off what he's got left. Just put it all out there because this is your last fight. Just you know, go out there, show up, get get the bag, and then get the respect of newer fans, become a legend, and then retire. I think that's the best way to go. That's my prediction for the feature prelims. We move on to Johnny Walker or Paul Craig versus Johnny Walker. Obviously, if you look at the odds for this fight, very even. However, it seems to be that Johnny Walker is the favorite, slight favorite, and we look at the reach and everything. Johnny Walker has a huge reach advantage over Paul Craig, 6 inches over him. Their weights are very. This is definitely not their weight. They're fighting at light heavyweight, so obviously he's also 3 inches taller, and the records aren't too far off. If we pull them up here, Paul Craig 16-5 with one draw. Johnny Walker 19-7. It's a very evenly matched up fight. This is the number 9 ranked light heavyweight versus the number 12. And if we look at their last few fights, Paul Craig 8-5 with one draw in the UFC. He's been knocked out 3 times. He's gotten 6 submissions in the UFC as well. It's very impressive. He's coming off of a loss to Volkan Ozdemir back in July. Johnny Walker, he is 5-4 in the UFC. He's been knocked out twice. His most recent win was against Ion Cutelaba on the UFC 279 main card for the pay-per-view back in September. And honestly, this is one of the fights that I had the toughest time trying to call who would win and how, because I think both fighters could possibly win. I think it's very possible that happens. I don't know. Paul Craig coming off the loss, Johnny Walker coming off the win. Paul Craig before that was on a 5-fight winning streak that included the likes of Shogun, Jamal Hill, Nikita Krylov. Johnny Walker before his win was on a 2-fight losing streak. One of them was a unanimous decision loss against Thiago Santos. Another one was obviously a very bad knockout loss to Jamal Hill. He's lost to Nikita Krylov. He's lost to Corey Anderson. And then before that, he beat Ryan Spann. Very impressive win there. That aged pretty well. I don't know. It's a tough one to call who would win this one. And I even have it written down. I have it written down, and I'm still just thinking of it maybe I'm wrong. Maybe something else happens. Honestly, what I think is going to happen, I think it's going to be a war. I think it's going to be a very fun fight. It's going to be a hard-fought battle between both of them. Maybe Johnny Walker gets knocked out. It's possible. Maybe Johnny Walker knocks Paul Craig out. That's also fairly possible. But if I had to pick one, I'll say Paul Craig. I'll take him by unanimous decision. Submission is possible too. I don't know. I very much could get this one wrong, not only by what way, but also the person. If I'm wrong, I wouldn't be surprised. I do kind of hope I'm wrong. I'm rooting for Johnny Walker in this fight. But if I'm going off against who I think will win, I think Paul Craig's got it, most likely. Definitely hoping I'm wrong, though. We move on to Jessica Andrade versus Lauren Murphy. Lauren Murphy, number 4 in women's flyweight. Jessica Andrade, number 6. The odds are very clear. Jessica Andrade is a fairly sizable favorite in this fight at minus 490. And who's it? Lauren Murphy, forgot his name for a second, plus 390. So very sizable difference in the odds. The reach is going to be a bit of an issue, because Murphy does have 5 inches extra in reach. She is 4 inches taller. Jessica Andrade is a very small person. 5'1". That's like my mom's height. And looking at their records, looking at their fighter pages, at their resumes, let me pull them up. Jessica Andrade, obviously she's got 9 losses, but don't let that fool you. Don't let that fool you, because Jessica Andrade has only lost against the best in the world. Valentina Shevchenko, Rose Namajunas, Weili Zhang, Joanna Jędrzejczyk, Raquel Pennington, and these losses are in 2015 as well. So Raquel Pennington and Liz Carmouche, Jennifer Maia. These losses were very, very long ago. And if we look at her most recent losses, they've only been against the best. Everybody else she beats. Caitlin Chukagian was formerly ranked number 1 at flyweight. She's beaten Rose Namajunas when she was the champion. She's beaten Tisha Torres, Claudia Gadella. She's beaten Amanda Lemos in her most recent fight. First standing arm triangle in the UFC. And it's very impressive what she's been able to accomplish. Despite her size and despite her record, she is a very, very good fighter with very good attributes. And when we look at Lucky Lauren Murphy, 16-5, 8-5 in the UFC, she's only been knocked out once in her career, which was against Valentina Shevchenko. So obviously, she's very good at taking those kind of shots. And she's only lost against the best as well. And these losses were pretty long ago too. But Sarah McMahon, Liz Carmouche, Caitlin Chukagian. This one was an exhibition. We're not going to look at that. So since then, she went on a 5-fight winning streak, obviously just to lose against the champion Valentina Shevchenko. Won her most recent fight on the Ortega-Rodriguez undercard. I think that was in New York that took place. Long Island. Yeah, that one took place in Long Island. She was able to beat Miesha Tate, obviously a former champion. So that's an impressive win there. And now she's going to come back to fight Jessica Andrade. Who do I think is going to win? I'm going to go with the odds for that one. I take Jessica Andrade. I take her by not round 1, even though round 1 is very possible. I'm not sure about round 1. I'll say round 2. I'm going to say round 2. Round 3 is also very possible. Any round, but I'll say round 2 for the knockout for Jessica Andrade. We move on to Gilbert Burns versus Neil Magny. Obviously, Gilbert Burns ranks number 5 at welterweight. Neil Magny number 12. Pretty sure I have that right. Or is he numbered like 13 or 14? If we close this, it'll show up. Yeah, number 5 versus number 12. The odds are very sizable as well for this fight. Gilbert Burns minus 460 favorite. Neil Magny plus 370 underdog for this fight. Neil Magny's got the reach, the height over him. 9-inch reach advantage. And in the arms, he is, how many inches? 5 inches taller than Gilbert Burns. Obviously, their last fights as well. Neil Magny coming off a win. Gilbert Burns coming off of a loss in Fight of the Year contender was that fight. Let's look at their records and their resumes and their last few fights. Gilbert Burns 20-5. Neil Magny 27-9. Most wins in welterweight UFC history is a trophy that Neil Magny holds right now. Gilbert Burns, we look at his last fight, was against Khamzat Chimaev. Obviously, it was a war, back and forth, very close fight. But Chimaev was able to take the win by unanimous decision. Before that, Gilbert Burns won a fairly boring fight against Stephen Thompson where he just maintained control on the fence. Before that, he lost by knockout to Kamaru Usman. Before that, he beat Tyron Woodley, Damian Maia, and had quite a few grappling matches as well. So, he's 13-5 in the UFC. He's been knocked out only twice. We look at Neil Magny, 27-9. He's 20-8 in the UFC. A lot of fights coming by way of decision. His last fight was against Daniel Rodriguez, who was formerly ranked number 14. After that fight, Rodriguez has been knocked off of the rankings with Li Jingliang once again re-entering the rankings in order to take his spot. Before that, it was a loss by Shavkat Rakhmonov for a UFC fight night in June. Neil Magny's kind of been trading wins and losses in this last 1 and 2 years. Lost to Chiesa, then beat Jeff Neal, then beat Max Griffin, then lost to Shavkat, then beat D-Rod. I don't have to do any more explaining because honestly, I think it's pretty clear who I think at least will take this fight. I think Gilbert Burns wins, and a decision win is possible too, but I don't know why. I just kind of see, I see a knockout. I see a knockout win for Gilbert Burns. I'll say the second round, even though I think the third round is a bit more likely. I don't know. See, Neil Magny hasn't lost by knockout since 2018. So, I don't know, man. It's going to be tough if Gilbert Burns wants to do that, but I think right now he's hungry and he's ready to come back. Um, I don't know. Should I say round two? I think kind of want to switch it to round three, but at that point, I should just give it a unanimous decision for Gilbert Burns. Thinking about it now, should I give it a decision? Both are very possible. You know what? I'm gonna skip it. I'm gonna come back to it because we gotta get past the video. It's already 35 minutes long. Deiveson Figueiredo versus Brandon Moreno for the quadrilogy, first quadrilogy in the UFC. Actually, I'm gonna keep Gilbert Burns' fighter page up. Deiveson Figueiredo versus Brandon Moreno. Now, both each other's toughest matchups. This is the one of the bigger rivalries in UFC history because they needed to fight 4 times. You know, they're 1-1-1 against each other. This one's gonna decide. It might not even decide who's better. It's just gonna decide who wins the war. You know. But yeah, just watching a lot of all three of their last fights against each other. Moreno's last fight against Kakar France. This is champion versus interim champion. Both have held the undisputed title at flyweight. Who do I think will win? Honestly, I really want Brandon Moreno to win. I love Brandon Moreno. I think I really wanted to win, but I feel like if I pick him to win, that I'm gonna jinx it somehow, just in some way. So you know what? And I believe this one a little bit more, anyways. I think it's just a bit more likely Deiveson Figueiredo takes the win by a unanimous decision. I think it'll be less close. I think it'll be a little bit more Figueiredo clearly winning, and a lot of people agreeing with Deiveson Figueiredo taking that win. That's just how I see this fight playing out. Maybe Brandon Moreno, clears the chin to Figueiredo if his weight cut does end up being as bad as it did appear to be, But I don't know. I'll say Figueiredo by decision because that's the safest bet for me right now. But truly hope Brandon Moreno takes the win instead. Move on to, actually, before we go to the main event, I'm going to just Gilbert Burns or Neil Magny, KO or I'll say third round knockout, technical knockout. I'm going to say that's, I don't know. Fans of being a second round KO or TKO, I'm going to be upset. But main event, Glover Teixeira versus Jamal Hill. Number 2 versus number 7. Website's kind of broken, so we'll just look here, pull up their fighter pages and everything. Number 2 ranked light heavyweight, former champion versus number 7 ranked Jamal Hill, coming off of a very impressive win against Thiago Santos that I personally thought that he was going to lose. 3-fight winning streak right now, all by way of knockout. 2 of them in the first round, all against ranked opponents at light heavyweight. Now going up against Glover Teixeira for the vacant title. Glover Teixeira obviously was on a 5-fight winning streak before 6-fight winning streak before losing to Yuri Prohaska barely for UFC 275. I see a lot of people writing off Glover Teixeira. I'm pretty sure the odds right now, they're slightly favored for Jamal Hill. And it's very possible he gets the knockout. I'm sure of it. I'm sure he could get that knockout. It's very likely that happens, but at that point, it would just come down to Glover's mentality. Here's the thing. Glover Teixeira has been up against very heavy hitters like Jan Blachowicz. He's been against big guys like Thiago Santos. He's beaten a lot of high-level guys like Kutalaba at the time, Krylov, Anthony Smith. He's almost beaten Yuri Prohaska, who is a very, very skilled fighter, is number 1 light heavyweight former champion. And I just don't think Jamal Hill will be the guy to make Glover Teixeira quit. If Jan Blachowicz couldn't do it, if Yuri Prohaska, by terms of knockout, what I mean, if Yuri Prohaska couldn't even do it, and if Glover Teixeira was hitting him with those shots back, I think Glover Teixeira is always ready to go to war. He has no plans of retirement. And honestly, how I see this going is I think Glover Teixeira on the ground compared to Jamal Hill, it's just very, very different in terms of skill. I think Glover Teixeira, and I want Glover Teixeira to take the win by a by submission. I think decision could happen, but I'm not sure if that will happen. I don't think it'll happen. I'll say second round, even though it might be second round, third round, or fourth round is what I'm saying. But I'll go for second round, go over Teixeira, submission win. Let's hope Jamal Hill doesn't knock him out because it's possible that that happens. These are the picks summed up. Josiane Nunes, round 1 knockout. Terrence McKinney, no, Bonfim, Ismael Bonfim, round 2 submission. Jailton Almeida, round 1 submission. Gabriel Bonfim, round 1 submission. Thiago Moises, unanimous decision. RoboCop, technical knockout in the second round. Podiera by unanimous decision. Paul Craig by unanimous decision. Jessica Andrade by second round knockout. Gilbert Burns by third round. Probably TKO, I'll say. Like something that's maybe on the feet. Maybe he knocks him down too. Knockout, technical knockout, whatever it may be. Figueiredo, unanimous decision. Teixeira, submission in the second round. Those are my picks. Very long video. I did not mean for it to be this long. It's like 42 minutes now. 41 minutes right now, but by the time I end the video, it'll be like 42 minutes. Yeah, UFC 283, very excited. Happening tomorrow in Sao Paulo, Brazil. These are my picks. Let's hope they're better picks than my Strickland Imavov picks, because I only got one pick correct on that one. Let's hope I at least get a perfect pick for this one. Yeah, want to thank you all once again for 10 subs. It's a very big accomplishment for me. And thank you all for the support. Don't really have much else to say other than this is a card that I think is being slept on by a lot of people. And I'm definitely looking forward to it tomorrow night.